Steph, please let us know a bit about your background in music and artists and management and what you're doing today.
Nice, yeah. I'm Steph Guerrero. I worked for major labels for a really long time. I started back when MySpace still was the thing, and we were selling physical CDs. And now I'm just advising artists on how to grow their fandom and develop their careers using the blockchain.
And I understand you, at one point, were maybe the most successful musician in art. So tell us a bit about your background as a musician, NFT artist, and what you're doing now with your new business.
Oh yeah, so pretty much yeah. At one point, I was one of the best-selling in the blockchain space, and I used to work with some major labels too on different projects, to the point I just think that the idea of blockchain is a really important technology for music in the future, and we're gonna discuss later on like what's going on in the music industry and what's the problem and most of the artists are facing on the business side as well, the struggle of the business model what we have today, and yeah, pretty much.
Great. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your background as well.
Sure. My name is Miles Carroll, one of the founders and COO of Opulus, one of the top 3 biggest music projects in the crypto space. We tokenize a lot of the music copyright assets, and then we also onboard musicians for like how to monetize, raise, and then like do predictive analytics for their music in the blockchain space.
So there's different rules around regulation and compliance. And I always tell everybody, obey the law. And if you don't like the law in a country, then don't operate in that country. And if you want the laws to change, then get a seat at the table and be a part of that change. Can we just start with regulation in the United States, regulation globally, if there's a musician or a record label, in fact, even a fan base, if fans want to collect artists' blockchain assets, whether it's things tied to royalties or just they're collectible and they're scarce, or it gives them access to something they can't get otherwise. Can we just start with the regulation side? I think sometimes it gets ignored and we just talk about all the exciting, fun things. So maybe we could just start with you, Miles. You're in the space. You said you have one of the top 3 projects, and we'll just come back this way. Talk a bit about your perspective on regulation and compliance in the U.S., where we're here right now, and outside, and maybe some advice you might give people.
Yeah, it's a tricky question because the U.S. regulations for music copyrights and NFTs I'd say it's a bit outdated because if you're talking about an asset, musician's copyright, an average musician is going to be worth $10,000, $100,000 at most. And to fractionalize that, you have to do traditional ways to do that. And we partner with Securitize at Opulus to do a lot of that. So all of ours is like legal, and we have the licensing to go through that for public sales. Environment for Reg D to update that for how to fractionalize something at a much smaller value for the music space. Unlike some of the other countries, like Korea has actually been quite progressive in how they kind of going and updating their legal systems to make it easier for musicians and people to access those musics at a much smaller valuation and fractionalization level.
And how about as an individual artist? Because you've been an artist with Sony, and of course you're working on a new business. But what's your perspective from the individual artist perspective on regulations globally?
Oh yeah, I was more on the business side with the some labels and I was operating project for them, so I'm pretty well known. I know a lot of within the the music system and the business. So what we have on the regulation today is I actually spoke to some of my friends in Luminate and all these American data or American talk to Copyright Office of the United States, and actually the problem of what I understand from them is it's very hard to verify the transactions on the blockchain for them, and which is we might in the future needs to this is what I wanted to work on, is actually have the system that you can gain trust from those associations and like different department within the United States. Of course, different country has different regulations. That's a part I think that we need to focus on in the future as the community. At the same time, like if we look at entertainment industry in general, like the history of it, if like the blockchain that we have right now, and which is Ethereum or layer 1, layer 2, and those are great, but at the same time is kind of too decentralized. I'm really I think that kind of system is really hard to be, by talking to them, like industry people, I have many friends, and I just think it's really hard to pass their, because it's too decentralized. It's too hard to track and control for them. I believe that's what's going on right now.
And Steph, you advise a lot of artists. So what type of advice do you give them, and how do you guide them to make wise decisions in an ever-changing global landscape in this industry?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge and opportunity actually when it comes to the music industry is the fact that as far as data collection, when it comes to ownership of copyright, it's already really messy and fragmented. So on top of that, there's even more fragmentation when you introduce the blockchain, right? So a song might have 20 songwriters, and that means that side of the copyright, which the composition is separate from the actual recording, is gonna be divided 20 different ways. And on top of that, there's another copyright, which is the recording, that'll be divided another 17 different ways. And then one of those 17 will decide to sell their income through royalties. And then from that 1/17th is what you're buying as an NFT. That's what's resulting right now. So it's already messy enough as it is. Obviously, with on-chain splits, everything could be smoother and people can get paid a lot quicker. But my first advice is for artists to go back to the beginning and make sure everything is registered properly, that you have your ISRCs in line, but you also have your IWCs in line. Most of the times when music is being delivered to streaming partners, the composition data is not there. So it's really important for us to start from zero, to have this data already very clear, so that when we do introduce this other level of complication, which is the blockchain, we're kind of in a better place than to move forward. But the US PTO and Copyright Office, actually, they just decided that the same laws in the US as they are basically going to be regulated within the blockchain as well. So that means that the life of a copyright is going to be the same from the moment of mint, but then also after, I think the creator dies, you have 70 years where it's monetizable, but then after that it isn't, which I think is fun for anyone who's building smart contracts now, because that'll be a fun thing for you to be able to burn the token after this happens so that monetization doesn't continue.
Lucas, to transition away from regulation, copyright, unless you had something burning on your heart to say for that, I'd love for you to kind of chat with us. There's so many different aspects to music, right? There's the melody, there's the writing, there's the performing, there's this process of doing concerts, the process of sales of assets, whether it's a song, licensing, or an actual digital asset. Then there's so many blockchains. There's so many marketplaces. So how do you navigate two industries, music and blockchain, that those words are so broad that it can mean so many different things? So in this industry, you've been for quite some time. How are you navigating these conversations, and how are you navigating decisions?
Yeah, when it all started, I remember this first thought about music and NFT in 2017 in the South by Southwest. I remember when they started to talk about that. As actually said, it was so complicated. It was so hard to get there, to know how to use it. So nobody used it. And then we are in this point, in this movement right now, that there's a lot of other possibilities and lots of other marketplace for you to have your revenues and selling your royalties and etc. But the main question is it doable? Is it possible if you do not know how to do it? And also if you do not do your ISRC, if you're not doing it right from the beginning, it doesn't work. It doesn't count, because of course, I did it in my in that website, and now I'm selling this NFT. But actually, they are not collecting from the top, from the beginning. So they don't collect your royalties for you to sell it, and then it's very hard for you to understand. And also, I work with several like artists in my career, and everybody's so lazy in this point. You know, when you start to talk about laws, when you start this first question, I was like, oh my God, this, because I'm lazy too, you know. And then when we were talking about regulation, we need like persons like Steph, like Miles, you know, to help us on triggering this new idea and helping on organizing this in a way that we can use this without suffering.
Miles, you built one of the large businesses in this industry. How did you make a decision on which blockchain to build on, or which type of music and artists to prospect to? How did you narrow down your scope and your industry so that you could serve a certain type of customer really well? Help me walk through that process.
The first part of your question about the chain, I'm a believer of we should be agnostic. It shouldn't matter which chain you're using. You should be able to migrate between them all without issue. And if you're not able to do that, then I don't think you're serving your customer base from your consumers and your audience from the artist well at to begin with. And the other one, what was the second question? I think there's two parts.
How did you narrow down the types of customers or partners that you're serving? Because music is such a broad industry.
No, I understand. Well, I originally started because we came in with a large, good amount of indie labels. Like Ditto Music was one of our main backers. We had some work with Universal that we had strong partnerships with. So we started from there and then branch out because my belief, at least, is like the ethos of the blockchain industry is to be agnostic to all of them. So you need to be able to play with all the players as well, but you have to have a starting place. So you start somewhere, and then you kind of like migrate and branch out from that. So I don't believe that it should be just committed to one. And then even the problem I actually see some of the issue, just to branch off from your question a bit, with the music industry and blockchain, because there's not that many players into it. They're very fragmented in itself, is there's not much trust for the music industry with blockchain industry because they just don't know where to play and where to use effectively, who can navigate them. What you were mentioning before of how to actually get them from like the creation of their content, whether merchandising their music or whatever else they're doing, to the end consumer of their audience. And somebody able to, there's what we're trying to do at Opulus and what she's trying to do and he's trying to do with their projects are create this place that people can trust that can actually do that. And then from there, we can actually start building a more effective music platform for into the blockchain industry. And then all the ideas that we do, like centralization of like IP content, data analytics attached to it, having real IP like use cases and tracking where it's going, all comes from that real basis of where you think you can actually trust where it is coming from, that your data sources are going to be true, and no, they're not going to screw you over.
Actually, if you could just wave your magic wand and create any product for the music blockchain world, like just the snap of your fingers, it exists. It's automated, it works. What does this industry need? What is the product this industry would benefit most from, in your opinion?
I think there's like most of the companies who were building protocols on blockchain. The problem of them is that they kind of have a gap between the blockchain industry versus the music industry, and the music industry is a really complicated industry. Has like just each country has like thousands of or more music laws, and which is you have to follow each of, and which is I don't think is gonna go anywhere, and if you look at for most of the artists when they have their music sold on blockchain, which is it doesn't count as a record sale, it doesn't goes into the data space, and once some people play their music on blockchain, it doesn't goes to MLC to collect their royalties, and there's publishing, but it doesn't because the space is so disconnected with the major industry, and that's what I see the problem, and But I believe in the future it's gonna get better because that's why we're here. That, like more professional people actually understand both sides to bring the gap together, and which is I believe it's gonna get there one day. Yeah.
Steph, are there any artists, bands, musicians, or even maybe labels and organizations that when you look at, you say, that's the lighthouse? Like, that's the example. That's how others should do it. I love what they're doing in this regard with how they're doing this with crypto or with NFTs or how they're doing this metaverse integration. What person or team stands out to you that you think is really doing things well, that's a forerunner, setting the tone for how others can look and be inspired to do something similar?
I think it's really hard to just point to one thing because everything right now is going to be an experiment. So I can just tell you which experiments I have loved. There's an artist called Zand, that's X_ND, and he monetized his songwriting camp for his upcoming album later this year, which is something that artists are not monetizing right now. They're still doing songwriting camps. They're meeting with their producer, they're recording, but that's that's something that was never monetizable. But he was able to kind of sell NFT access to it, which I think is a really, really great example of something that I love. And then, of course, there's always going to be the disconnect with labels because you hear tons of announcements of labels signing with this platform, this other platform. I don't know if you remember, but last year, LimeWire had a deal with Universal Music. So all these things constantly happen, but the truth is that labels have never been innovators. I worked for labels forever. I know this. I was, the kid frustrated in the middle of a meeting who had an attitude problem because I wanted to test technology. So there's going to be a lag for things to come forward. And when it comes to data, it took us 20 years to turn all of the normal recorded data that we had in the past to just become digitized. So imagine trying to bring this on chain. It's going to be another huge challenge. So I think those are two things you need to keep in mind. But right now, I just encourage all artists to continue to experiment and iterate and figure out what are these curated experiences that you can give access to your fans that are gonna build that relationship and develop you as an artist and build that audience and allow you to tour in the future and grow your career.
Lucas, one of the things that I sometimes recognize is that we somehow have taken something so cool, so creative, so important as music, and we started talking about technology around music like that was important. We never had cassette tape conferences about music. We never had compact disc conferences about music.
I believe we had.
Or MP3 conference. But you know what I mean? We've almost made the technology at the forefront of the conversation, and I think sometimes we've forgotten about the artistry. Can you just remind us about the importance of the artistry and the reason why an artist would lean into a technology-oriented conversation, because ultimately it's in the best interest for themselves and their community, but then how do you encourage an artist and a band not to lose focus of the fact that they are supposed to be an agitator to society? They're supposed to make people laugh, supposed to make people cry, supposed to be the ones that irritate political leaders, and supposed to be the ones that inspire political leaders, and not to lose the edge of what makes them an artist, makes them important to our culture and society.
I can't.
Bummer.
It's just that what I feel like, I just used that Suno, the AI that creates music now, last week. And then one client that I usually do like jingles for them, and he said like, no, can you just put this same riff in the Suno to see what comes from? And then they create like a song, and the client said to me, all right, use this song as a reference, and let's create something like this. And I said, shit, man. So, and then when you say like, can you help like people to know the path for the next, I don't know, artist or something? My belief is when you're creating some, I don't know, new categories or new technologies, everybody that is really into it, they don't feel it. But when the next generations, they are going to hate it. So I really believe like that in I don't know, some years, a lot of people, they are going to hate this kind of industry, and they are not going to notice. We are not going to talk about blockchain anymore. We are not going to talk about AI anymore because it will be like so intrinsic in the middle of it. Like we are not going to see it, but we have to solve this till it happens. But the greatest thing is that we are going to survive, I believe, because we survived for several other problems that we.
I actually want to piggyback off his
You go.
answer. I think he touched on something I think is important. Us five on this stage are here because we like music and we like innovating in that space, first and foremost. And we're here because we actually see blockchains as a tool to actually proliferate that for the music industry. And what he was saying, at least what I was getting out of that, and what I believe is the music industry tech is just supposed to augment and to be out of the way. It's just to help get to your audience more than anything else. So if we're actually creating barriers for that, that's a problem. But what we're doing is trying to create places, a marketplaces, metaverses, like digitization of music copyrights, analytics to understand how to do projections on those royalties and all that. That's all there to actually just be tools to help get them to their audience better. And if we're not doing that, that's not. Ingrained how people consume music. You don't really think about it; you just consume it.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get to that space.
No doubt. Let's thank our panel. Thank you for being here, sharing your
you.
wisdom with
Thank
us.
you all
We
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.
Right this way, my friends.